The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how's it going?
It's going good. 2 resurrected.
You should say that to somebody the next time they use the phatic phrase, how's it going? Oh, it's going too good. Resurrected. Just and no follow up, nothing, just leave it and then wait for your HR papers.
Well, that's the thing, is that's a huge time saver, because then you never have to talk to that person again.
It's true. Yeah. Or at least you've risen the cost of entry. Like they will seriously need something from you before they talk to you again, you know?
Or worse. That's like some kind of cult handshake. And this person is now like big into me because they think I'm like a level 8 in their cult.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had that literally at work one time when I wore a shirt that said lawful good. And the person said, oh, you play? And you look to your left, look to your right. Yeah, I play. Do you play? Yeah, I play. Well, which edition do you play? It's like, 3-5 for life, ride or die. And it's like, we should talk.
4E.
Swing and a miss.
One of our supporters is actually a big fan of 4E. We love you.
Oh, really?
We love you. Everybody else is crazy.
Yeah, we do. I wonder who hurt them, but no, it's fine. Fourth edition performs at or near expectations. It's just it's not my cup of tea.
George, what video game did we play?
Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition.
Oh my God! Could you imagine trying to do a single episode on an entire tabletop system?
We should do that for one of our off episodes now.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I don't know if I'm qualified. Anyway, what did we play?
We played Diablo II, Resurrected, The Reckoning.
This time, it's personal. So I want to say up front.
Sorry, because it would mean
you have other addendums?
That would mean that for Diablo 1, is this time it was professional. Next time, it's personal. Sorry, continue.
They don't really tell you what the hero's deal is in kind of either game. So maybe it was professional. Maybe he's just like a hired hand. I don't know.
Yeah, but this time, Deckard Cain got kidnapped. And,
so much more story. So much. We'll get to that. So I want to say up front, we played Diablo 2 Resurrected, but I am counting this for OG Diablo 2 for a few reasons. One is you can still play OG Diablo 2, but only if you actually still have your original CD keys. So like you can download it from Blizzard and you can install it, but you have to they don't sell CD keys for it anymore. And so anyone who is going to play this game today, even if you owned the game at the time, you probably didn't hang on to your CD key. So I felt pretty fine playing Resurrected because this is how anybody who plays it today is going to play it. Also, and this is the real important part, is I looked at a list of what are all the quality of life things they did in Resurrected, and none of them are core mechanical changes to the gameplay loop. So if we review this game and it was good, then the original was good. If we review this game and we think it was bad, it's because the original was bad, because there is nothing they did in the quality of life improvements that would make someone who did not like the original say, but Resurrected, where you auto pick up gold, now it's worth playing, right? There's just nothing like that in the game. And I do have a list somewhere, but once I saw how brief it was, I was like, I don't even care about this, because it's not enough to make a difference. And if you're a real hard ass, you can even play the game with original graphics and original audio and everything. So like this is as close to the original game as you can get without like pirating the CD keys or going into your parents' attic. So,
and we would never do that because we play all of our games legally and legitimately. So,
like all podcasters who review games, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, we are a like in Diablo, we are paladins, paragons of the law.
Of virtue and ethics, and what what is your nostalgia experience? Oh, no, game.
Yeah,
the game like
the colophon or whatever. So this game originally came out June 28th, 2000, which is only like a couple years after the original. So they're like, oh god, a machine that prints money, make more of it, please. First game, crazy successful. This one went on to be even more successful, as you could tell, since they literally just re-released it. But if you have never played it, Diablo 2 is a direct sequel to the hit hack-and-slash role-playing game Diablo. The games are virtually indistinguishable from one another, except for how much more plus ultra Diablo 2 is. There's more classes, there's more story, there's more primevals, but you still just have the one camera angle.
And what is your nostalgia experience for this?
I borrowed this game from my neighbor, which I kind of forgot about, honestly. Like, he just had a lot of games, and so he was way older. He was like my older brother's age, and he's just very nice about letting me borrow games. And I realized when we went to sit down and play this, I was like, oh, I never owned this. So this is actually, now that I bought it to play, this is actually the first time I've owned this game, because in high school, when I was playing it for the first time, I was borrowing it. And then in college, when I was playing it on my roommate's computer. So I just never had to give anyone money for this game until now. So I played the ever-loving crap out of it for free.
It's it's interesting too, because as much of a RPG fan as I am, it's interesting because I did not really get into RPGs until I was in high school. And there was one RPG that I got really into, which was Dungeons and Dragons, and that persists to this day. The way I got into Dungeons and Dragons was, and this is why we had all that Dungeons and Dragons stuff at the beginning, was because I was going to say this here. We're professional. So the reason why I got into Dungeons and Dragons is because a person that worked with my dad, who was in his 30s, so impossibly old by my standards at the time, he was into Dungeons and Dragons. So my dad would just drop me off at his house, where he, myself, his sister, and one other person would play D&D for like 8 hours at a pop, right? But then there would be occasionally where, for whatever reason, either we started late or we ended early or something like that, and my dad wasn't coming to pick me up yet. So this, 36-year-old person, 40-year-old person that had, no real experience with kids, was forced to entertain a 13-year-old. And he was really into computers. And so what did he have? He had Diablo 2. And so he's like, if you like crack, have you tried heroin? Because this has all of the D&D stuff just on a steady drip. And I remember just being so excited to play that game. And then I remember he said, I remember playing the Paladin a lot, and I was just like, oh man, I'm just gonna have prayer on all the time, because I'm just constantly healing. I remember specifically one time him leaning over my shoulder and saying, using prayer? Why won't you use thorns? Everybody kills themselves on you. And then just walked away. And so this time when we were doing that, I vowed to myself, I'm going to play the Paladin, and I'm going to do the Thorns or a playthrough.
Yes.
And see if he was correct, So this man who is now probably in his 50s or 60s, I will now vet his, 20-year-old take on this game.
This is exciting to me because the Thorns Paladin was a big part of my nostalgia experience. It's like, because I remember just thinking how funny that was to just, like, you walk through the dungeon and all the skeletons just die when they try to kill you. Ha 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 ha. And like, I have no recollection of like, was it actually that effective? Did I just remember it being that effective? So like when I sat down to play, I was like, no, if this doesn't work as well as I remembered, it might not be funny. And I really want it to be funny.
But yeah, so that is my nostalgia experience for this game, is being 8 o'clock at night. I'm hopped up on candy and junk food in a smoker's house. So I remember the smell, I have a very, very razor clean.
He was just trying to set the environment, right? Because it was supposed to be like sulfur. So it's like, it's like the smell of brimstone.
I did not actually know how much that particular smell stuck with me until I started playing D&D with some people at work, and they all smoke cigars, so I would occasionally have a cigar with them. And I remember at one point I came home, took off all my clothes, showered, came back downstairs to throw them in the laundry because, I have to, it's like a clean room, right? You're gross after you smoke, right? And I picked them up, I said, "Oh, that smells like D&D. Oh my God." So that's
not what
smell is deeply tied to memory, man. So I did not know that link was that hard in my brain, but here we are. So the moral of the story is I couldn't play as much as this as I wanted to because I had to be smoking a cigar the entire time I was playing it in order for me to really get into it.
That's fair.
And I have problems now.
Shall we chill?
We shall chill.
So if you like what we're doing, you should subscribe to the show. If you want to help other people find it, you can always leave us a rating and review. But my personal ask is find somebody who there's a game that we've reviewed that they'd like and recommend that they listen to that episode. I think those kind of recommendations are better than randos on Apple Podcasts, but still just do both. If you want to reach out and talk to us, you can do that on the website, on Twitter. I stream pretty much all of the games we play on Twitch. I had a hell of a time streaming this, and I still did it, but like BattleNet kept crashing on me, and then the game crashed on me, and then OBS crashed on me. So like I did do it. Like there's hours of proof that I did it, but like it was not as smooth as it has been other times. When you wire in external hardware over like a Super Nintendo or something, it's a lot smoother. If you want to kind of go and beyond, go above and beyond. It's one of those. I'm not going to check because we don't do research. But if you want to do one of those things, you can actually become a Patreon supporter. If you become a Patreon supporter, you get the after show, regardless of the level you support at. But if you support at a higher level, you can get your name shouted out. So first, we need to thank our 8-bit classics. Kevin.
An amazing Amazon.
John.
A nominal necromancer.
Jason.
A ballin' barbarian.
Yarno.
A slick sorceress.
And Jacob.
A pristine paladin.
And our 16-bit hero, Michael.
A dangerous Diablo. and also the $1,000 tier this month is for $1,000. Both Lions and I will attempt to max on the bench press, and we'll record it and send it to you. Yeah,
I
haven't done that in a while.
Yeah, well, and just because we're big into this nerd hobby doesn't mean we don't care about our health and fitness.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, they used to call us the waiters because we spent all day stacking plate.
Okay, I have to cut you off right now because I know you have like 100 of those. We got to talk about the game. What were the audio visuals like?
Shut up. Audio video. Yeah, no, it was good, man. It was as I remembered, which is, and for me personally, aesthetically, I really walk the line between, gritty realism versus fun, cartoony stuff. But given the tone of this game, I feel that the visual aesthetic plays in very, very nicely to it. I feel like it is very gritty and realistic. It's not so gritty that it's like rubbing sandpaper over your eyes. But that being said, I think that it's it's not, what was that one game, that Rocket Rabbit game that we played for PlayStation?
Oh God. I knew the name of it until you started butchering it.
That game. Well, anyways,
that game was made of JPEGs. Yeah,
it was. It is not PS1 gritty. It's
Jumping Jack Flash.
There it is. Yep.
Jumping Flash. Jumping Jack Flash is a song.
But yeah, that one. This was not that. I thought that they held up as well as I remember them.
Well, and did you toggle it all between old and new and old?
I did. I played it with the new on mostly because it's nicer. But I did toggle it on and off, and I said, yeah, all right, and then went to the new.
So I kind of had the same experience, and the reason I settled on the new is because I'm playing on this large, beautiful monitor that I have, right? So I was like, if you are looking at this at the correct resolutions, it looks exactly like you remember, which is great. If you're looking at this at modern resolutions, it's a little pixely because it's all stretched out, but it still looks like everything is clear and readable, right? It just can't compete with the, sexy 4K 60 frames of the modern one. But what I really appreciated is in the modern graphics, they didn't. I didn't notice. There's probably a lot of little subtle things, but it doesn't feel like they said like, oh, now we can also sneak in all these additional animations, and oh, now we can also sneak in all these additional particle effects and stuff. Like things basically just look like when you flip on to like, you remember when HD channels first came to cable, and it was like, oh, this is like regular Nickelodeon, and this is HD Nickelodeon, this is regular news, and this is HD news. Like it feels more like that, where it's just the exact same thing, but you've cleaned the crap off of your glasses, right? It's just a little cleaner and smoother. So I didn't really feel that bad playing most of the time with the better graphics.
Well, and also too is it's like again, this is realistically the only way you're going to experience the game, so it's like, again, it's not like you're talking to somebody and saying, hey, have you played Diablo recently? Dude, I own Diablo. Oh, really? So what do you think? It's like, oh man, the graphics are garbage, because they are playing it on their old hardware, on their original. It's not. This is not playing the DS remake of Ocarina versus somebody who might actually have an N64 and is playing the original. This is the way that you are likely to imbibe the game. So that's why I was like, you know what? This is just, it's a little bit nicer, so I'm going to go ahead and go with that. But again, the old graphics didn't cause any problems. Some things that this game did that Diablo 1 did not do that I appreciated, and honestly is I could write a whole essay on it, is Alt. I like the Alt key. It's super clutch.
It's a great key.
The Alt key highlights all of the items, and not only does it highlight all of the items, but socketed items are gray, like a dark gray, and magic items are blue, and super awesome magic items are yellow.
Yeah, and then uniques, I think, are like gold. It's like a darker yellow. And then set items are green.
Yeah. Yep. So that's the thing, is that like you not only does hitting Alt give you everything on the screen that you could pick up, but it also gives you an idea for, is this even worth me putting in my inventory? Because initially you're like, pick up all of the things, because all of the things have some value, and there's that. And then at some point you're like, yeah, this isn't worth my time. I'm not picking up this, fractured bow or whatever that's going to take up 90% of my inventory and is worth 15 gold. It's not even worth the town portal to hawk the thing.
Yeah. I'm a barbarian. Why am I picking up a damaged crossbow or a crude dirk? Like, it's just not worth it. And it's nice because, as we'll talk about later, there's a lot of loot.
So much loot.
So being able to essentially like judge books by their covers and not have to go any deeper into it is a big time saver, because you need it.
Yeah. The only weird exception to that being, and I don't know, maybe this was not me diving deep enough into it, but throwing knives, man, like they are, in my opinion, the cigarettes of Diablo 2, because you could pick up some bolts, you could pick up a damaged crossbow or whatever, but throwing knives, every time I'd pick up throwing knives, I'd sell the stack for like 700 gold or something stupid.
Oh, I did not put that together. I didn't know throwing knives were like secret gold.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, like this was my lived experience. Now, I didn't rigorously. This is not a very rigorous experiment, but I mean, at least a half a dozen times I picked them up, and every single time they sold for triple digits. And yeah, and I don't know why, but bolts and arrows didn't have the same exchange rate. So throwing knives, every time I saw that, I was like, yes. Anyways, that's more mechanics. Yeah, so ability to find items, super, super clutch. One of the things that is, and this is just a quality of life thing that it didn't have, that I feel like a modern game would have, and I don't know if Diablo 3 had this, which is an ability to hover over an item, even if it's only in a shop, and immediately compare it to what you've currently got equipped.
So you actually, that is one of the quality of life things they added, and it only works, I think it only works in shops, or maybe you can do it with your inventory. So part of the reason you probably missed this is because there's a million billion modifiers to every piece of equipment, right?
Mhm.
So, and you did yourself a favor because this was one of the few quality of life improvements and you didn't benefit from it. So there you go. It was
Yay.
more like the original game. There's, the name of the thing, the stats for the thing, any bonus stats for the thing, the meta, like what's its durability and everything. And then it says something like click to equip and like shift click to compare. So if you are looking at a sword and you have a weapon equipped, it will tell you like, oh, and it basically just puts the two little boxes side by side. Honestly, I didn't use this particular quality of life improvement because on a normal playthrough, you're not making these minute hyper optimization decisions. So I actually, like, you didn't notice it and I never used it because it was just like, I can tell if something is obviously better than what I have, and I don't need to like line by line be like, well, it's one more in this row, but it's one less in that row. Oh, but it's two more in this row. Like that happened to me 0 times, but that is there. And I think later it became standard.
Well, and that's the thing is that honestly, I used to really like that type of gameplay. I don't as much anymore because one of the games that does that a lot is Borderlands, and I used to love that in Borderlands. Figuring out which types of things do I want to equip so that way they'll synergize, and I don't know, man. Eventually, I liked donuts and got fed all of the donuts in the world, and just got done with that mechanic to the point where I'm like, look, just tell me whether or not it's better to have +2 to prayer or an additional +2 damage, because I think I remember the glass shattering moment where I went off the rails on that, which was I was at work at one point. This was 5 years ago, so not at my current job. I always work at my current job. And I literally said like, okay, well, so let's take prayer for example. I'm like, okay, well, if you have +2 to prayer and you're using it, then ostensibly that means that you would have, what that does is that buys you time. So if you're fighting something with X DPS, then that would buy you Y more seconds, which then over those Y more seconds, you would deal Z more damage. Now, then if you had less time, but this other stat increased, then that would deal you this much more damage. And at some point, like dropped the pen and it clanked across the table. And I said, this isn't why I want to play games, man. So yeah, so I get that incomparables are a good thing, but at some point it's just like, I don't know. Yeah, fine. I'll just have prayer be a little bit better and move on with life until something substantially better. So yeah.
Well, and I do think that is an important like thing to know about yourself if you're going to play a looter shooter or a hack and slash RPG is I need to understand the systems well enough that I can play the game and enjoy it. But if it's interfering with your life, maybe don't spend so much time hyper optimizing like, well, this one does a tiny bit more damage, but this one has a slightly faster attack speed. So I should go out into the field and see what my actual like real life DPS is, like not just the calculations. Like, nah, man, it's not why I play video games. It's not why you play video games. It's why some people play video games.
Well, and actually, and this is straying way into gameplay, but whatever, is that I think that it's a different game. So one of the things that games like this do, and I think that this game does it very well, which is that there's several different games in it. So there's the run and click on things, right? And the enjoyment of running in and how do I, battle and what things do I pick when and that, like the loot and shoot, right? Portion of it. And then there's the puzzle game, which is played out of combat, right? Where it's how do you maximize for this thing? And they are two different games. Literally, I purchased Teddy his first deck of Pokemon cards recently for his birthday. So we got like 3 starter decks, a fire deck, a dark deck, and an electric deck, right? And so we're playing it, and we also got, for like $5, I got like 100 common cards, right? Because I said, we need to get these common cards too, because first he is going to play the Pokemon game, then he is going to play the puzzle game of making a deck for a Pokemon game, which is a different game.
Right.
It's entirely its own thing. You don't ever have to play that game. You can, which is why some people don't. They buy pre-made awesome decks because what they want to do is optimize their play, not optimize the deck. So this is that, right? Where it's like you need to be aware of the fact that games like Diablo are actually 2 different games. And you don't have to like playing both of them. You can honestly, you can really, really liking the puzzle aspect of it, play hours doing the puzzle, and then set it on the easiest difficulty so you can blaze through, get more loot, and, come back, right? And then play the puzzle some more. So anyways, I know that was very gameplay heavy, but yeah, it's I realized that I'm like, I don't like the puzzle part of the game. So anything that makes me play less of that part is good.
Literally every time I was like, okay, my inventory is filled up and I have to go to town and deal with that. I called it shopping. I was like, all right, time to go shopping. Cause it's like, that's about as serious as I was taking it. It's like, yeah, I have to buy food every week, but I'm not scrutinizing every single vegetable. Like, if I need vegetables for this dish, then I need arrows, then I get arrows. Okay, I need to repair my armor, then I repair my armor. I'm not like, oh, but this other one is got magical repairability, and then I won't have to spend gold on repairing it. Nope, don't care, can't care. Like, just and I don't begrudge the people who do. Way back on the audio visuals. The map in this is a lot more detailed than the little quick map in Diablo 1, which 80 to 90% of the time, I think, is a huge improvement. You just look at the map and you're like, oh, I can tell where doors are. I can tell where there's exits between floors. When there's a special thing you have to care about, like a quest item or something, like that's highlighted. It's usually a great level of detail. Sometimes it is a great level of detail that blocks all of the action on the screen. And so for me, is it pronounced Karast, the jungle? I was toggling the map on and off a lot because I just couldn't see what the hell I was doing. Just there's so many trees and they're so detailed on the mini map. And because they're green and the ground is green and the trees are green on the actual gameplay map, it's all just a big green blur. I just can't see what the hell I'm doing. So in most of the dungeons, it's just a thin little line for the wall. And then they're over here. There's a shrine and maybe you care about that shrine. And it's, oh, this is very helpful. But in Karast and in, it's the plains of, I don't know. It's the desert area. At the end of Act 2, when you're looking for Talrash's tomb, the rocks are this pinkish reddish color, and they just kind of contrast in an obnoxious way with the yellow of the sand, and just makes everything muddy and confusing. And I mean, it's not experience ruining, but most of the time the map is useful, so you just leave it on, and then sometimes you're on off, and it's one press, it's tab, right? So it's just on off, on off, on off, on off. So I thought that was is an interesting problem, right? How much additional detail do you want to give in the mini map or maxi map? It's kind of big, takes up the whole screen. How much do you want to in the overlay map to be useful, but to not be a huge distraction? And I think they nailed it about 80 to 90% of the time. But when it fails catastrophically. It's unusable.
Yes. And I think that their, answer to that problem is, what one button turns it on and off, so it's not like you have to go into a menu, highlight 3 different things and then click it on, right? It's just nope, this is getting in the way. And especially because combat tends to come in waves, so you can just be there's one Falmer and there's never just one Falmer. So here we go. You turn it off, go kill a bunch of things, then turn it back on and be like, okay, wait, where was I? What am I doing? All of that being said too, though, is I will say that, maximizing for that level of detail on the map, I think, especially for me personally, playing the Thorns Paladin, speaks a little bit to how much direct engagement combat necessitates from you. But we'll get into that in mechanics. So,
yeah. 2 other things in the visuals that I really loved is this game has rough day and night and rough weather. As far as I can tell, it doesn't affect anything. It's strictly visual, but it just makes the world feel more alive. Sometimes it's darker, sometimes it's lighter, sometimes there's rain, sometimes there isn't, and it's just nice. It's just a little thing that probably costs them almost no graphics processing power, and it just makes everything feel a little more alive. And the same kind of thing comes through in the towns, because there's the towns, first off, there's more than one. For another thing, there's a ton of people in them, and they all just kind of saunter around in their little area, right? Whereas in Diablo 1, everybody just stood in their exact place. So you always knew exactly where to find them. In Diablo 2, Cain kind of ambles around using his, staff as a walking stick, and he's always like in the center of town, like near the drinking supply. In like whoever the blacksmith is in a given area, they like have their hammer, and sometimes you see them at the anvil and they kind of like toss it as like an idle fidget. And whoever like sells potions will have their hands like tucked into their robes, and then they'll kind of like shake it out a little bit and like stretch their back and stretch their legs. And it's just, you're usually not just standing there staring at people. But if you do, right, if you lean down to take a sip of your tea, for example, and you take your hand off the mouse and keyboard, then you get to just like feel like the world isn't a cardboard cutout that exists just for you to go have an adventure in. Like, oh, this is a real world with real people who are all like incapable of stopping the big bad. So they're waiting for me to do it. Right. So like they will help me sort of as much as they can, kind of, but they're
for cost.
For money, but they are real people. And I love little, little environmental, naturalistic movements. Like it makes things feel better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to your point, it goes a little bit further to assist you in suspending your disbelief, So it helps do some of that heavy lifting for you, because I was talking to somebody recently about movies, and I was like, I'm fine with a movie doing all kinds of weird stuff until all of a sudden I become very aware of the fact that I'm watching a movie. Then once I hit that point, it's kind of hard to start coming back from it, right? So once you kind of get to the point where, I mean, and we do have lower expectations for video games because they can be glitchy. But, like take a Bethesda game, right? Like Skyrim's a blast. It absolutely is so much fun. But there comes a time in everyone's Skyrim journey or in everyone's Fallout 3 journey where you stop playing Fallout 3 and you're playing, oh, look at the weird dumb thing Bethesda did, So this helps you. This helps you from doing that to where you don't walk up to a person and they're like, "Ho, citizen, how goes it today?" And you're like, "Hey, pretty good. Where's the bathroom?" "Ho, citizen, how goes it today?" And you're like, oh, "Okay, that's all you're gonna say to me. All right, never mind." It just makes it feel a little bit. Even though every time Deckard Cain, I had the patience for Deckard Cain's old man stories as I do for old man stories in general, which is when he's like. When I go up to Deckard Cain, he's like, "Hundreds of years ago, identify my stuff, old man," But it was there if I wanted it, know? So,
so that's on me. You can repeat dialogue, right? You can rerun any of the quest dialogue. You can talk to people about stuff and be like, wait, introduce yourself again. Wait, repeat that one thing you said again, right? So like, if you are in a hurry and you like blast through something, you can be like, wait, say that again.
Yeah, it's funny because you'd think that might take you out of it, but to me that reinforces it because you are the hero, right? And you are doing what they can't do, so they are willing to be so patient with you that even though they've identified your items hundreds of times, you're like, "I'm sorry, dude, who are you again?" It's like, "No, I understand that I may not be important in your story."
Stay a while and oh, he's gone.
Oh no, there he goes.
I wanted to talk more about the music. And what I mean by that is I wanted to talk more about the music, but it's like, to me, this is the thing they actually changed the least from Diablo 1. And we have a few people who are like professional musicians and like music teachers in the audience. So I am super sorry if I've just offended any of you. But I just don't honestly hear dramatic differences, and I think that's good. I really liked the ambient kind of creepy soundtrack that Diablo 1 has, and Diablo 2 has, because it has different environments, the ambience is like appropriate to the environment, so like you're in the desert, so that that has desert ambience, and then you're in the jungle and that has jungle ambience, and then you're underground, that has underground ambience, right? So like that's good, but it's never toe tapping hummable tunes, right? and that's not what I want from this. I want ambience, and I think Diablo 1 did that really well, and I think Diablo 2 does it basically the exact same performance.
Agree.
I have two other things that are just super short before gameplay. You got anything else in audio visuals?
No, just the UI is pretty dense, but usable, and I think it relays all very important information. So that's good.
Yeah, that also feels like it's similar to Diablo 1. There's just a lot. There's a lot of numbers. There's a lot of crap on screen.
There's a lot of stuff in there, but I feel that the amount of real estate that each one takes up is proportionate to how important it is. So the health and mana are by far the largest. The active ability that you have tied to, right, left and right are like the next biggest thing, and then your litany of potions and all that kind of stuff. So again, I think that they were judicious in the way that they laid it out, which is good because it's pretty intuitive. But that's it. That's all I got.
So my two minor things. One is Tyrael and Israel and whatever the other angels are. They have like these long, flowy blue wings. They're supposed to be angel wings because they're angels, but they're like these long, thin blue strands that kind of move independently, but never totally leave the shape of like an angel's wing, like a big, cartoony bird wing. They're stupid. I thought they were stupid when I was a kid, and as soon as Tyrael came on screen when I booted this game up, and because he's like in the opening cutscene, this game has cutscenes, lots of them. There's Tyrael's like he looks like a knight in armor with like a hood up so you can't see his face. His wings are stupid. I don't like his wings. All the angels have wings like that. It is very stylized and artistic, but I was just I surprisingly, a lot of my nostalgia for this game was apparently attached to my hatred of Tyrael's wing design, which was just a weird feeling to be like, I hated those when I was in high school and I hate them now.
Yeah, and they didn't change that in Diablo 3 either. I remember in Diablo 3 thinking, these angels have weird wings, and it's a choice, and they're sticking with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's just what they look like, and that's fine. I don't know, it's stupid. I thought it was stupid when I was a kid. I think it's stupid now. And then last thing, which I think is actually a good segue into gameplay, I specifically remember you saying when we played Diablo 1, which I will put that link in the show notes if I remember. If not, just look for it. It's not hard to find. That when you click on barrels, sometimes those barrels explode, right? Boomy barrels.
Mm-hmm.
And
booby barrels.
Booby barrels? Boomy barrels.
Booby, like they're booby trapped. They're booby barrels.
See, I was going to say, that's a whole different kind of barrel, George.
No, they're booby barrels.
Booby barrels. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I don't get your mind out of the gutter, man.
I can't. So when you click on I can't say it, dude. When you click on an exploding barrel,
I can't.
Yeah. When you click on an exploding barrel in Diablo 1, it instantly explodes and you take damage, proportional to something. I don't know if fire resistance helps or not, but you get hurt, right? In this, everything that is trapped, because there's boomy with an M barrels, there's acid barrels, there's shoot a dart out of the wall barrels, there's spikes come up from the ground barrels, right? There are lots of things that are trapped and lots of different kinds of traps, but they all make a mechanical trap noise because they're not magical traps. They are physical traps that exist in the world. And they all make a little like when you hear like metal gears like clicking into place, kind of like when you change gears on a bicycle, and you can dodge the trap. And I was like, George specifically complained about that in the first game because he was like, you just have to make the trade-off of taking some damage versus not finding all the loot. And it's not enough damage that you, of course, don't just go for it, which just makes it feel kind of pointless. Whereas in this one, if you are paying close enough attention, it's not a trade-off. You can actually get all the loot and never take damage because you can dodge the traps. And I like that. I was like, there's this little sound trigger. It's kind of subtle because it's a trap. It should be subtle. But if you hear it, you can dodge out of the way. And I was like, awesome.
Right, because then it completely changes the equation, because then it's no longer, look, it's about the math, man. There's a 10%. Distress signal. 90% of the time it's an alien ship with a bunch of dead aliens and free loot. 10% of the time it's a deadly trap, but I'm willing to roll those dice. It's not, that's what it was in Diablo 1, right? Here, it's high risk, high reward, right? It's all right, I don't I don't think that I can dodge this, so I'm just not going to take the risk. I'm going to go slow and steady. I'm going to get less loot. Or, nah, man, I've got this based off of my skill. It's not just rolling the dice and then realizing that you have a traitor dice and throwing it into the attic. It's you and your skill. But no, good. It's good. Gameplay?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly like Diablo 1, but more. And I don't know which one of those things I want to start with first. So what do you got for me?
No, you go first. And because I've got a lot of my stuff is kind of weird, and I'm sure I'll jump off of something that you pick.
Okay, so when I say more, I mean just everything. Like if you've never played Diablo 2, but you have played Diablo 1, just imagine if there's just more of that game. There's more story, there's more classes, there's more equipment, there's more monsters, there's more environments, there's more magic, there's more item types, there's sets of armor, there's runes and gems which can go into socketed armor, which is normal armor that you could make into magical armor. Like there's just so much more of everything. And then the classes even have additional complexity because you have a skill tree now. So every sorceress is not like every sorceress, right? Every necromancer is not like every necromancer. The reason you and I both played Thorny Boy Paladins is because that is just one of many types of paladins you could play, right? So like I don't want to just jump all the way to calling it an overwhelming amount of stuff because the game balance makes it so that you don't have to get a friggin' PhD in these systems to play through normal. If you want to play through Nightmare and then Hell, whatever the hardest difficulty is, like then you sort of really need to have mastered the systems to stand any kind of a chance because the crap that's dropped, the random loot is no longer good enough. But just on normal, there is kind of an overwhelming amount of stuff if you're not willing to try it and then see, I don't need to be an expert in this. But I mean, even little things like just the sheer amount of crap that enemies drop is mind-boggling. Like there's just more.
Yes, no, there, and to be fair though, is I think that the thing that I like about it is that there is more, but you literally can't experience it all at once, right? You experience all of the more piecemeal, right? So one of the games I downloaded recently to try to play for the second time and got put off for the second time was Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. Have you played any of that?
No, I'm consist every once in a while I'll see a meme come up and I'm like, oh yeah, no. and then I just kind of slowly back away. Because as far as I'm concerned, the last great Dragon Ball game was Budokai 3, not the Tenkaichi games, the one we played like the ever-loving mess out of. And if I never play another DBZ game, that will just be the best one forever.
Yeah, and actually I replayed that one recently. It absolutely holds up.
Yay.
And the new one, Dragon Ball Fighters, is actually pretty good. But all that being said, is I booted it up, and the reason why I mention it here is because it starts off and it says like, hey man, you're gonna be your own person in this universe, make your own fighter. I'm like, yeah man, I'm into this. It's like, hey, here's a bunch of plot. All right, it's fine. Okay, now here is everything about this game. Here's the item shop, here's the buying things, here's how you buy this, here's how you upgrade this, here's how you do this, here's all of the controls you could ever possibly need. And I remember that's when I quit the first time, and it's when I quit this time.
That design ever worked? Like I know Prince. I know there was a time when front loading people with everything in the game was a thing that you just did because video games were like board games and you had to read all the rules before you sat down to a board game, so you read all the rules before you sat down to a video game. But at that time, video games didn't have thousands of systems to them.
Right. That's the critical piece, right? Is that before it was like, here's how you play checkers, and here's everything you need to know about playing checkers. And now it's like, here's 3-dimensional chess. Here's 4th-dimensional chess. So first we kind of need to explain how time travel works. Like it's that now, right? I say all that
to play Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, first you must invent the universe.
So do you do that? Okay, good. Now, but so I say all of that to say that this game is inherently not that, because there's 6 classes? 4, 5?
I think there's 5, but then Lord of Destruction expansion adds 2 more. There's a bunch. The original had 3. It's more than 3.
Amazon, Necromancer, Barbarian, Sorceress, and Paladin.
Yes,
So
and then they add the Druid and the Bard, something else.
and the Bard, it can't be the Bard. It'd have to be useful.
Womp.
So I say so. Anyways, but the thing is that you will not experience all of them immediately. You can't. You must pick one. Now you might pick one, get 2 minutes into it, and then say, nah, I want to try this other one, right? But you will only be playing one at a time. So you don't need to know how a barbarian works if you're playing a paladin. You will get tons of loot, but you will get the loot one item at a time. So you really only need to make one decision at a time. You will go to tons of areas, but you will only be in one area at a time.
You will get the loot one encounter at a time, because a mob comes in, and if you just have good luck, several of those monsters might drop reasonable loot. So, like, you do then have space to organize it and sort that out, right? You don't play for hours before you sort it out, but it's not one item at a time. It's like one set of drops at a time.
That's fair. But that being said, is I mean, like, you're only evaluating one item at a time. Like, you're not.
You're like bubble sorting.
Right. Yeah. To your point, right? So it's not that you're trying to grab all of the items and looking at 5 of them across a row to like pick one at that point in time. Typically what happens is you knock out a whole bunch of dudes, and then, all of the stuff's there, and you can pick it up and be like, interesting. And then maybe put that down and pick up another one and go, interesting. You're not trying to, it's not a giant map that says, here's 10 places to go, and you will need to go to all of them. Where are you going? What are you doing? You're like, I don't know where to go. Like, it's not that. It's not, was it a decision paralysis? It's not
analysis
paralysis.
Yeah.
It's analysis paralysis. I think is a little different than decision paralysis. Like, analysis paralysis is when you're given a ton of data, and and then you just kind of like mull the data over and over. I feel like decision paralysis is when you're given like 20 different options, and like not necessarily any data.
Yeah, it's the reason you can't go into a store and find 10 different red shirts. They have 2 red shirts, because otherwise you're trying to scrutinize, like, well, this one's a slightly darker red, but I kind of like that this one's a little bit brighter red, right? So it's, yes, you might be right. The game does not paralyze you.
Correct. Right. Because that's not that part of the game. That part of the game comes later when you're playing the puzzle, right? So anyways, I say all that to say it is a lot, but I feel that it's a lot that says, hey, if you like this cake, there is a near infinite amount of this cake that is in a freezer in the back that you can eat whenever you want, right? As opposed to, if you like this cake, eat it fast, because we've got a whole bunch of it and it all spoils in 5 minutes, Yeah,
and for me personally, the way I came to, they're not trying to force feed me the cake, is that I started to feel overwhelmed by the amount of crap I was picking up, and I fell surprisingly into like deeply comparing, like, well, is this better than that? And what about this? And then because I was streaming, I was like, this is not good television. So I like pushed myself to like more actively play and, kill things. Like, you're a killer of things, go kill things. So I was like, okay, I gotta complete quests and kill things. And then when I realized that these micro decisions were not having a dramatic swing on my ability to succeed or causing me to fail, then I was like, oh, they didn't say I had to eat all this cake. They just said there is a near infinite amount of cake, right? And so once I arrived at the exact place you're talking about, then the overwhelming feeling lifted, and I was like, oh, I could stop eating cake whenever I want. But at first, especially coming from Diablo 1, where like gear matters so much and levels matter so much, I did feel a lot of pressure I was like, oh crap, there's 5 bows that just dropped from that mob. Which one is the bowiest bow in all of Bowington? And then when I realized it doesn't really matter that much, I was like, oh, okay. As long as I'm happy with the bow I have, then we're good, man.
So that actually leads me to one of my notes, which is, intrinsic versus extrinsic rewards, right? So this game, in my personal opinion, leans heavily into an extrinsic reward system.
Man, that's tough, because that implies that there are some intrinsic rewards to this. And I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess like literally it can't be 0 unless someone is like holding a gun to your head. But I mean, it's high fantasy gambling, right? Like, that's, you're not spending money, but it's like, what is the next loot drop? Like, I would say this game is borderline. If it's not 100% extrinsic motivation, it's close.
It's really close, right? Because the thing is that when you actually, the way to think about it is if there were no levels and there was no loot, would you ever play this game?
I mean, once the story's good.
I mean, but no, you'd read the novelization of it. You'd read a graphic novel of it. Like there's no, you know.
Yeah, I guess if the combat was slightly more real time.
No.
Okay, no.
As it stands.
It stands, probably not. No.
I mean, because that's the thing, and the story's fine.
Because then it's just complicated page turning.
Yeah, that sounds like turning a page with extra steps. Yeah, so I mean that's the thing, right? Is that is there's no, as opposed to a game like Mass Effect, right? Where there's levels and there's stuff and there's great story and all that sort of stuff, but the moment to moment combat matters, right? The same thing with Borderlands, right? Great story, but the combat, great, tons of loot, but running and gunning and shooting matters. Here, I mean, especially, and this is a bit on me/us, playing as the Thorns Paladin, you just kind of like walk into an area and you let everybody kill themselves on you and then you pick up their stuff.
Well, and worse, I got to play I played all the way to Diablo as 2 different classes, and the other class I played as was the Army of Skeletons Necromancer, which is even less engaged than the Thorns Paladin.
So that's the thing, is when because you didn't get mad, you had people to do that for you, So I found, and this is for me. So as far as does the game do this type of thing well? Absolutely. This is the second one. They have made a third and are now making a fourth, right? So that being said, though, this is not my type of game because I literally remember when I stopped liking this type of thing, and it was my sophomore year of high school, and the epic levels of D&D just came out, the epic level handbook, and I said, we're going to make level 40 characters, and we did, and it was a blast. And I was like, oh, I don't have to put a bunch of time and energy into watching numbers go up. I can just have the high numbers, And so then having a game that is basically says, if you want the higher numbers, you have to spend hours of time to get the high numbers. I'm like, no, I don't. I can scratch that itch somewhere else, So in a game like this where the actual game loop is not very engaging, I find it a little tedious,
Yeah, and this is where I think the story and the way you choose to play will make it very easy for a player to optimize the fun out of game, right? Because there's the different classes and then the different ways you can shape those classes. So we could have played a might paladin, right? Where you have to go in and beat every individual monster to death with your mighty warhammer, right? And we didn't. That's not what we chose to do. And what I think is to the game's credit in terms of balancing is you can optimize the fun out of the gameplay on normal difficulty, but then if you want to play Nightmare in Hell, optimizing the fun out of the game is the game. Like that is what it becomes, is can I make a character that can even survive in this numbers skewed crap storm that Blizzard has created for me, this crap Blizzard, which is that's like the third game that some people are into. They're like, oh, the game is going to stack the deck way against me. Can I still hyper optimize every single system? Can I switch between these broken skills super fast because I have them all mapped keyboard shortcuts and then and survive? And that is not a game I enjoy.
I agreed. No, I mean, and to me, that is the difference between I like eating Philly cheesesteaks and I have engaged in a Philly cheesesteak eating contest. Those are not the same thing, So, I mean, yeah, to say I like playing Diablo and I like playing Diablo on Nightmare mode, it's just like playing Doom on Nightmare mode. It's like, well, you're basically playing a different game at that point. So that being said, is that the kind of as I say, is that the combat loop is not challenging, and so then basically a lot of the game comes down to the challenge of the game, in my own personal opinion, from what I saw, and again, maybe it changes a lot on higher difficulties, is the challenge of the game is the puzzle game of optimization of the character, right? So that has more to do with how well you fare in the game than the actual combat aspect of the game, right? So realistically, it's more like a soapbox derby.
Like once you build it and let it go at the top of the hill. Like you're kind of, you've done all you could do.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, there's it's not quite that extreme, but it is to a degree where it's like I have now made the character. How well do they fare? You know, as opposed to the way you would think of it. Like when you're watching somebody play, you're like, oh yeah, the game is about going in, smashing people's skulls and getting stuff. It's like, really, it's more about taking all the stuff back to town. And between that and your character optimizing everything, and then you go back out and then just see how that build did. You know.
Well, and the real cost is Diablo 1 was super light on story, but what I came to realize over our playthrough is it's just all ephemeral. Like, oh, you accidentally sold the great armor that your warrior was using, kill him, start a new one, right? And and Diablo 2 actually still sort of expects that. Like the grand sweeping story is a thing you care about once. And then you skip it all. You hold down, left click to skip the cutscenes. You never let Cain get a word in edgewise. Identify my items, old man. Right? It's just like you basically you go through the story. It is a good story, and it's well executed, and it's satisfying and interesting, and it's well acted because it's everybody's voice acted. But like you get to care about that once, because then everything sort of becomes numbers but with visuals. So like I got all the way to Diablo, which is the Act 4 boss, because there's technically Diablo 2 Resurrected includes the Lord of Destruction expansion, which is where you get Act 5, and that's where you go and fight Baal, which I know is pronounced Baal, but it really just looks like it's Baal, and I want to say Baal, and I might say Baal by mistake. But so, I got all the way to Diablo with my Necromancer, and I didn't build him right. I didn't build him right because the act bosses have powers that the like super monsters that you're fighting as you go through the act don't have. And so I got all the way to Diablo, and it was just like, well, I can grind endlessly because monsters don't scale with you, right? So I can now grind endlessly to get the skill points I need to essentially respec my Necromancer, because you get one respec per game, and I had already used it. And so that character was essentially just dead to me. So because the game has a shared stash, he made a very generous donation to the church that my paladin worked for. And so that got my paladin off to a roaring start. And then he, took up the torch and then went on, and I was able to kill Diablo with my Thorns paladin. But it was just like, oh, this isn't like a bug or a flaw or a balance problem. Like, this is the 10-hour way of the game teaching me, hey, the way you spec your Necromancer doesn't work for this boss. It's like, yeah, that was an expensive lesson, game. But when you are expected to play the game on an endless loop for maybe hundreds of hours across dozens of characters, it's like, yeah, okay, you lost 10 hours on this Necromancer. So what? That's an acceptable price in this universe. And that's like, oof.
Yes, no, I actually didn't know, because I fortunately did not respec my character because I just was afraid to hit that button, so I did not know it was a one-use thing. So I was
in single player, I think you can do it unlimited. In multiplayer, you get one per character per difficulty. So you can do once on normal, once on nightmare, once on hell, and then once you've done it that third time with that character can never be respec again.
It's wild. That's an odd choice. So, and that kind of brings me to, so one of the things that I went, in my opinion, back and forth to town too much.
It's a lot. It's a lot of shopping, a lot of trips to the mall.
Yeah. So, I mean, even when I said, you know what, if it's mundane, it's not game, man. Like I'm not picking up anything that is not, if it's like the color white, it's not, I don't touch that stuff. It's gross.
Name in white, not all right.
All of this is true. So even with that, though, I was just bamfing back in town forever, especially because I found the game of Tetrising my inventory to be tedious after the third or fourth time. So especially when Scrolls of Town Portal are like 100 gold and I had like 24,000 gold, I was like, I'm not dealing with this. I'll just pop back into town, have Cain identify all of my stuff, sell all of that stuff, and then leave, And since I didn't want to spend hours going back and forth with like, is this better? Is that better? I just, kept doing that. So I say that to say that a lot of the times I would go in, sell all of my stuff, make $2,000. The shops hadn't rotated their inventory, right? And I'm not sure at what frequency that happens.
Dude, I think the stores are there because they're supposed to be there. And so if you have to buy stuff in an emergency, like if you died and you need to buy equipment, but their stuff was always garbage. Every random drop was better than even the best stuff I found in stores.
Yeah, I did buy a weapon from one of the stores at one point because it just, the thing I had just sucked. And, that one was socketed, so I put a decent gemstone in it, and it was good for a paladin specifically. So I was like, hey, that's fine. So that being said, is that since the stuff in the shops is normally garbage, I don't know why your inventory needs to be so limited and force you back to the shops. They should be forcing you back to the shops at a frequency that matters, right? So, i.e., if let's just say the average shopkeeper has an item that is worth buying at a 5,000 gold increment, then you should kick me back to the stores when I have accumulated approximately 5,000 gold worth of stuff, right? Like that should be the frequency of that. So that way, when I do get forced back to the shop, I can then go shop around and say, oh, hey, that looks pretty sweet. I'll give that a try, or something of that nature, right? So forcing me back to the shop to sell a whole bunch of stuff and then go back out and back to the shop, it's needless tedium. So why do I have all of this gold then? I now have a ton of money that is it's almost like money in D&D 5th edition, where it's like, I've got 10,000 gold. It's like, hope you like living lavishly because you can't buy magical items,
There is the one person in every town that you can gamble with, and it's almost always garbage, but sometimes it's not. And this is what I think is funny about this mechanic is everything you just described is factual. And the emotion that I think you were getting at is factual, because what they have optimized, or what they seem to have optimized for, is just the thrill of getting stuff. Not that it mechanically will serve a purpose 9 times out of 10. It's almost always you translate this found equipment into gold, right? So
which then translates into nothing.
But that's the thing, is it translates eventually, once you have enough money, it translates into gambling. So you cut out the middleman of killing monsters to gamble on the loot drop to literally just gambling directly in town. So you can, if you consider killing monsters is one way to pull the arm on the slot machine, giving money to the guy in town who lets you gamble is another way to pull the arm on the slot machine. So you can never be somewhere in Diablo where gambling is not allowed and encouraged, right? And I think if you took that out, right? If you went super extreme and you just said, characters don't have equipment. You have your stats and you have your skill tree, and that's how you get stronger, right? You combine skills in interesting ways and you pick which stats are going to get stronger, and that is how your avatar gets stronger. But instead you have this extra layer of loot. And the difference with loot from, loot buffing you versus stats and skills is stats and skills are things you have to earn, and they come slowly, and loot comes at a tidal wave, devastating, drowning, like in that one scene in Harry Potter where they accidentally touch the cursed treasure and it starts multiplying and it's hot and it's crushing them against the walls. That is basically the speed at which you get loot. But some people, myself included, I do see the enjoyment in that. I don't want to cater too much to that enjoyment because I think it can become unhealthy, but I do understand the little thrill of is that thing that they just dropped? Especially, we didn't even mention, there's a whole panoply of things hitting the ground noises in this game. So if you hear the amulet noise or the ring noise, those are rare. So there's a little extra thrill than if arrows fall or a potion falls, because that kind of crap falls all the time, right? So there's all these little things to give you these tiny little drips of excitement that, even though they generally don't pay off, right? They're like party poppers where it's hey, streamers, and then it's done. Without that, the whole game would be totally different. If you lifted that dopamine gambling drip out of this, it would not be Diablo.
No, it's a Skinner box, and that's fine. If you're willingly putting yourself in a Skinner box, but and again, when I was young and I was introduced to this stuff, I absolutely loved the Skinner box. And at some point, I managed to say, I don't I'm not going to put myself into a Skinner box. So now when I start to recognize it, I like inherently kind of revile it because I'm like, no. I said, I said I wasn't doing the plunger penis again. I'm not doing it, you know? It's a Roger Smith quote. Anyways.
Do I bleep that? I feel like I don't know. I'm going to leave it.
All of this is true. So what I think that this game could really benefit from, and again, you know, like the we're reviewing it to say like, you know, where did it stand up, where did it fall short, and I think that, you know, again, when comparing it to modern systems, there are literally games that are Diablo knockoffs in the sense that all it is a Skinner box. That's all it is, right? So does it hold up? Yeah, it's a very this Skinner box is as good as modern day Skinner boxes. But if I were to give it notes, a crafting system would be cool. You know, a way, because and it could be, you know, let's just say that a normal item drops at like a 1% rate or something like that. So let's say if over 100 encounters you are likely to get that item, it would take 200 encounters for you to get enough items and sell enough gold for you to craft that item. So it is less, you know, advantageous, but it does give you some control over your destiny to where it's like, oh, well, you know, if you're looking to craft this one this sword that looks really awesome, like, oh man, I kind of want to build around that sword, it'd be so cool. It's like, yep, you can do that. Just, you know, it's going to cost you 50,000 gold. It's like, all right, well, I just did a drop with the shopkeeper for 2,000, so looks like I got some work to do. But then every item that you pick up that isn't worth something feels like you're moving towards that goal, you know. So it doesn't feel like I pulled the lever and I got, you know, bankrupts, right? Or I got whatever Robotniks across the thing, right? You know, I think that would just be kind of a nice way to, again, and it would just be another mini game. It's all mini games, right? So it'd just be another nice little mini game, but that mini game I would actually like to play.
So I'm going to play Diablo's advocate here and say the reason they probably wouldn't do something like that is because that would create a longer, slower loop that is outside the engaging part of the Skinner box. So here's what I mean by that. There are items that are either literally only usable by a certain class or only make sense to be used by a certain class. So like, oh, I have this mace, and yes, anyone can swing this mace, but it buffs these certain paladin skills, right? And then there's some things that it's like literally only a necromancer can equip this, or only a sorceress can equip this. So you find that stuff all the damn time. And because you have a shared stash, you can take things you find and put them in the shared stash, and now you are incentivized to also be running a druid and also be running a barbarian and also be running a whatever, right? So now you're doing that, and then you take that loop of, you know, Skinner boxing across multiple character types, and you take that and you scale it to the internet. And now I'm not just Skinner boxing across multiple character types, I'm Skinner boxing across multiple character types, and they all live a secret sublife as a merchant, right? Because now you play and you prefer to play a Thorns Paladin because that's just a super fun class to play. But you know that I also have a Bony Boy Necromancer that I think is super fun to play. So because we're friends, if you find something that's really good for a Necromancer, you will hold on to it so that when we are playing together, you can be like, oh, by the way, I found this wand that's really good for Necromancer, and toss it to me, right? And then instead of doing crafting, you have this like social merchant layer that's kind of laid on top of the game, because just like Diablo 1 has a single player mode, but it's really meant to be played online, Diablo 2 leans into that way harder, which makes sense, right? When you consider when this game came out in the year 2000, like more people had the internet and more people were playing video games online. So like to lean hard into how do we make this system that's single player scale to multiplayer, that's how you share the Skinner box load, right? You find something cool for a class I'm playing, so you give that to me. I found something cool for a class you're playing, so I give that to you. And so we're still playing the single player game, but we're playing it like kind of in parallel and like supporting each other. If they had systems like crafting, you'd be like, well, I don't I don't want to go play online with other people. Like I will just kill 2,000 boars until I have enough boar tusks to make the great boar tusk shield, and then I'll have it. Instead of saying like, going into the center of town and doing the, wood for sheep, right? And like, I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong, but I think it feels clear which one they chose to optimize for. There's a certain amount of Skinner boxing you do alone, and then the way they scale that up is Skinner box with friends.
Sure, and again, if you really want to lean hard into the Skinner box, then that's the way to do it. Well, and actually, too, this speaks to, and I'm going to butcher this a little bit, but this does speak to something I saw one time, which is it was actually a video on hyperinflation in MMORPGs, right?
I think I might know what you're talking about, but go on.
So basically, the idea is that MMOs, right? That this one being one, right? Because it can be played online, right? Part of the issue is that how do you keep value in a currency when anyone can print money, right? And I believe it's gems. So long story short is that the Diablo II community realized relatively early in this game that gold's worthless, and so they actually stopped using it as currency and started using, I think, gems or something else. They started using a third currency. So like, for example, if you said, hey, I've got this awesome bony boy, like item, like, do you want it? It's like, yeah, sure. I'll give you 10,000 gold. No, there is no amount of gold you can give me that will make me give you this, but I will trade you for this particular item type,
Yes. Yeah. It's not a pure barter system because they still were using a type of currency, but it's like currency plus, right? It's bartering is very common, but there's still this other thing that kind of can be used like money, even though money exists.
It's an alternate currency, right? So it's like saying, hey, the Russian ruble has hit hyperinflation, so all rubles are now worthless. But if you have British pounds, I will trade you in those. So like you need to go get British pounds because. But
also, like 60% of the time, business is done in the pound sterling, but 40% of the time it is just a direct trade. Like, I have a Jeep and you have a Ferrari, and even though a Ferrari is more valuable than a Jeep, you want a Jeep and I want a Ferrari, and so we don't go to that third good, like we don't rely exclusively on currency, which is, I think, makes the economy even more like speculative and random, because it's like, oh, I think I have a really rare thing, so I'm going to hold on to it and not convert it into currency because I think it is more valuable than the currency. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also this game doesn't have any currency sinks, like there's nothing that the game that you can buy in the game again. And this is where it goes down to, is there's nothing in the game you can buy with money, because if you could buy something with money in the game, right, with gold, then that drops it out of the economy, because then it goes to the digital vendor who destroys the money, right? As opposed to in this game where it's like, well, I'm not going to spend my gold on anything. So I say all that to say that, again, I agree that maybe a crafting system isn't the way to go. One of the ways that I think Borderlands handled this problem very well is that they had vending machines where you could get armor, like basically every type of item, right? But what they would do is most of the items were pretty trashy, very similar to this game, right? Where it's like you could buy it, but you're really only buying it because you've screwed up and the weapon that you've been using forever is now just not getting the job done. So you got to try something else, right? But they always had a weapon of the day that was actually kind of on par with whatever you could find, but there was one of them, and it only cycled about every 20 minutes. So what that did was it was a great money sink, because you would just throw money at that to see how well it played. But it did what I think this game could benefit from, which is, and again, this requires the ability to infinitely respec your character, but try a different play style, right? So if it's like, oh man, there's this super rare item set, whatever, but it's not for a Thorns Paladin, it's for a Might Paladin. You know what? Let me give that a shot. And if they then moved away from the, hey, we're going to force you to play the Skinner box 1,000 times because now you've got your Thorns Paladin, but have you tried getting your Might Paladin? Because you can't have one paladin, you know what I'm saying? You have to have 17 paladins, one of each flavor, right? So if they'd instead said, okay, you know what, really just one of each class will do, and you can move the points around indefinitely, then you could have gotten more difference in kind by having that type of a system in play. But the moral of the story is, I had a bunch of gold, and I mean, it was all worthless, man.
Yeah. Well, I think when I stopped with my necromancer, I had like literally half a million gold, and I had been leaving money on the table, right? Like I didn't take every single magical item to sell it. I didn't do every single thing I could. Like that was just walking around money. And that was even after, because if you put your money in your personal stash, when you die, you lose like 10% of it or something. But that's better than dropping all of it if you have it on your person. If you put it in a shared stash, nothing happens to it. So once I realized that, I was like, oh, now my money is all in like a friggin' Caribbean secret no tax account. So, I threw myself at Diablo a few times, and I just couldn't beat him with the way I'd spec my necromancer, but it wasn't even costing me anything except time, right? So like all of the in-game penalties had been essentially thwarted, which further devalued the currency, because I was like, now I'm not even at risk of losing this thing that wouldn't harm me if I lost it. So it is weird to basically the only thing I ever spent money on where I felt like I need to have money available to do this was to resurrect my mercenary. And just as a tangent into that, this is one of the additions that I actually big thumbs up on. I think the inclusion of set items is more Skinner box fodder, and the inclusion of gems and runes is more Skinner box fodder. And that's not bad. It's just more, right? The inclusion of the mercenaries, and especially because there's different types, and within each act, there's different types. It's a nice new system that felt like, oh, there's some interesting synergies I could do here, right? Because like my necromancer had I forget what they're called, but the mercenaries from Act 2, they basically have a paladin aura, but they only have one. So it's like, oh, do you want one that will make you hit harder? Do you want one that will heal you a little bit? Do you want one that will make you take less damage? And so you can now hyper spec into one thing because this person is like covering your weakness, which feels like the entire point of having a teammate, right? I'm good at this. They're good at that. We work together. And when you then switch your class, like maybe they need a different mercenary, and maybe you like, oh, these enemies are, fire enemies, so I'm going to go and get a sorceress that has ice magic, right? And you can kind of like move that around a little bit in a way. It's not as flexible or powerful as like completely respecking a character, but it does give you a little bit more like, oh crap, I hyper optimized for fire magic. I could really benefit from some ice magic, so I will go get a mercenary who has ice magic, and then that will help me through this part. And it is one of the few inclusions in the game that I'm like, no real notes. Like I like the mercenary system, and I like calling them hirelings.
Fair enough. I have just a couple of other, two other moderate things. One of them is, what is the point of durability in this game?
It's it's there to give you something to spend your gold on.
Exactly. It is, but it's not enough. It's not enough of a money sink, right? No. So it's just another, again, so one, your inventory is too small, so you have to go back to town way more often than realistically you should need to, right? And then when you go there, it's just one other place you have to go. You go to the person, because they make you go back to town so often to exchange your stuff. You go to the person, you sell all your stuff, you go to the blacksmith, you click the button that says, and thank God there's a button that says heal all of my inventory, because if they made me click on each individual one, I'd be actually frustrated. But it's like, yeah, man, that just cost you 50 gold. I'm like, out of the 25,000. Okay, so who cares? Like,
didn't even notice it was gone.
Yeah, right. I mean, like, I just, it's literally like somebody being like, hey, man, that's $5. Here's a 50. Just forever leave me alone about this. So to me, it was. Again, I could understand it being a money sink, right? And it would even make more sense if it was like, and I'm sure that it does, where it scales a little bit by like item rarity. So the rarer the item, the more money it costs to heal it. But it would have been really cool if they, even if they just really jacked up the the cost difference between maintaining the durability on like a standard item versus a rare item versus a set item, because then you could say, all right, I'm only going to wear this super rare item when I super really need it, because when it starts to lose durability, it's going to cost me thousands of gold, you know? So I kind of like, at that point, you're kind of renting all of your items, you know? But that being said, it could have been, that could have been an interesting mechanic. But yeah, to me, I was like, this is just another stop when I'm in town, that if I just, and the problem is if I forget to do it, it has ramifications. So it's just more tedium, you know?
Even there, you can forget several times, right?
Yes,
like
you can.
There is a wide margin of error, and it warns you when your equipment is about to break. You get the little, up in the corner.
Yep.
So like you got to really, really bone yourself into breaking a piece of equipment. Someplace I think they actually do the like pressure really well is with the way potions restore health, like on a timer, right? They don't instantly restore all of your health.
Yeah,
Rejuvenation potions do. But that adds a little bit of tactics to combat, especially if you were playing a melee character, because you need to not die, right? And like we were both playing Thorns Paladin, so like we need to get hit, right? So like you by the end of the game, you have a belt that can hold, I think, 12 or 16 potions, like some ludicrous number of potions, right? So if you have a bunch of super potions, they will restore all of your health every single time, but will they restore it as fast as you are getting murdered, right? Like, are you weak against fire? And every once in a while, this demon happens to use like a breath weapon that's a fire attack. So you could survive several hits from their melee attack, but how low are you going to let your life go before you throw that potion so that it starts refilling your health? And it does, I don't know what the term for this is, but if it's, say it's refilling 200 points of health, and then you take 50 damage, it drops you, like your floor goes down by 50, but it continues to refill up to that, whatever that total was. So if you have a potion that will actually restore more health than you have, you need to deploy them tactically so that it continually refills your health as you are taking damage, which is like a cool little, it's hard to tell almost that it's happening, but I'm pretty sure that is how it's doing the math on the back end. And what I like about that is it creates tension to using potions in combat, where you have to kind of duck and weave and be like, okay, I need to disengage and let this potion like take effect, and then re-engage, and then, go back into the melee. And that's a cool little loop where the like time pressure and the tactical pressure matters, whereas like durability feels like a pointless chore that 0 times I put a non-trivial, I mean, this is our first game that we played for a full month, like on the news schedule, right? I put a non-trivial amount of time into this game, right? I played through 2 characters all the way to, the epilogue. Like I put a fair amount of time into this for a game we're reviewing, and 0 times did durability ever matter, ever. Like it was just a thing you did. You click identify items on Kane, you click repair all my items when you're at the blacksmith, and it's just, and if you forget, then you have some unidentified items and some unrepaired equipment. I'll get to it next time I go shopping. Like it's just not ever a problem. But the potions thing, I feel like, is that health depleting and durability depleting could theoretically have the same kind of like, oh, I gotta duck and weave so I don't take too much damage to my armor, otherwise it'll break. But nope.
Yeah, no, I agreed. To the point where, again, and this may be like immersion breaking, but I would much rather that when you go into town, there's a little item notification at the top that says, all of your items have been repaired. All of your stuff has been identified after you get Kane. And it's just like, yeah, because that's what I was going to do anyways. All you did was save me, 30 seconds of my life and three clicks, like just do that for me. Do things. Why am I paying you? One of the other things that I particularly struggled with this playthrough is I was playing this game predominantly right before I went to bed. So I had about like half an hour chunks, right? So I was like, oh, okay, I'll play it half an hour chunk. And I did, about half an hour chunk, play, 5 times a week, right? I was like, that'll give me 20 hours, right? So I did. I put all that time into the game. That being said, I didn't get as far as I would have liked to, because this game doesn't lend itself to that very well, in my opinion, right? It lends itself to longer play cycles, because if you are in the middle of a dungeon, right, and you're you're getting sleepy, man. Sandman's knocking at your door, right? So you're like, I don't know, I'm not having fun anymore. I'm gonna go to sleep, right? Well, you better be at a stopping point, like a game decided stopping point, because if not, it's a roguelike, right? So in the sense that like the dungeon switches around. So next time you load it up, your butt's right back in town, and you're at the top of those catacombs or whatever, right? So now you're going back through the catacombs, and if for whatever reason you get called away, you got another thing going on, you've got to log out back to the top, right? So the game was even easier for me because I unintentionally grinded the ever-loving hell out of the first few levels, because that's just what ended up happening to me, So and then there were other times when I was playing and I had more time to play, but I hit a point where I'd like finished a quest and I was like, I don't know if I have another quest's worth of time to play, so I'm gonna stop here because like I don't know. So it's weird. It does give you distinctive places to put the game down, but it doesn't help you with, okay, but now I need to put the game down. Like you have to play the game kind of on its terms.
Yeah, which I never hold that against a game, right? I try not to hold that against a game, but I am like I think you are getting at, very aware that sometimes makes a game unplayable for me, right? Like, I think I talked about this when we reviewed Phoenix Wright, it's like, don't stop in the middle of a trial because you may now be locked out from critical information and you don't want to restart the entire trial. You're just struggling with this one bit of witness testimony. And Diablo 1 and 2 have the same kind of issue where it's like, make sure you clicked a waypoint and, ignited the torches on this waypoint before you stop. Otherwise, exploring this whole area was pointless. All you did was get experience, right? Which is not, okay.
It's not nothing.
Not nothing, but it does feel a little like, right? Because you think you made X amount of progress, but you really made like 0.5 X amount of progress. Where I got bit by this is just because reasons. Because I think, did you play single player characters only?
Yes.
Okay, so I played online characters only because I did play a little bit with Tiny Panda Pal, my Twitch moderator, so I got to like do some of the multiplayer stuff. And where I got bit by it is I started both my characters as online characters, even though I ended up playing my paladin mostly solo. And I was playing over this last week before recording, and twice I got kicked out of BattleNet in the middle of a quest. So it was just like, oh, all that 30 minutes is just gone. There's just nothing I can do about it. And then once the game just crashed, which I mean, that happens sometimes. But if it was most modern games where it was autosaving every 6 seconds, I would have lost maybe a few minutes of progress, not like an hour of progress. And what brought this to light for me was kind of the one of the other facets of the problem you're talking about is this game has quests in a more formal way because there's more story than Diablo 1 had, right? It's not just like, oh, hey, you killed this big bad. We're happy about that. That was a quest you didn't even know you were embarking on, right? Because the quest in Diablo 1 is kill Diablo. And everything you do along the way is either an obstacle to killing Diablo or in service of getting to and killing Diablo, but they're not like, there's no narrative. Not really. In this game, there's a lot of narrative, and a lot of the quests are go get this thing to do this other thing to put inside the Herodric cube so that you can transmute it into this fourth thing. And then, whoa, and then you can go over here and then you can punch this demon right in the schnoz. And that's fine. But one of the times the games crashed on me, I was literally in the room with one of the MacGuffins and I just hadn't picked it up yet, because when you change stuff in your inventory, it is saving your character silently constantly. So if I had just gotten that stupid thing into my inventory, even though when it crashed out I would have lost all the dungeon progress, I would have at least had the MacGuffin. But I didn't have the MacGuffin. I was just in the room where the chest with the MacGuffin was. And so I was just like, but now I have to not only explore that entire dungeon again, but I have to get all the way to it. So I have to go to the nearest waypoint, find the dungeon because it's roguelike, explore the dungeon because it's a roguelike, and then get the MacGuffin, which is fine because I will get more loot and I will get more experience. But it's frustrating because I didn't die, right? I didn't make a mistake. I didn't go into the wrong dungeon because there's lots of optional like single floor dungeons you can explore just to get more experience. I just got kicked off BattleNet, and that's like no, Blizzard, that was your fault. Like when I load the
make
game,
this right. What are you going to do, Blizzard, to make this right?
Yeah, when I load the game, the MacGuffin should just be in my inventory. There should be a little menu that's like, which MacGuffin did we just screw you out of? I should be able to select it.
All of them?
Yeah, killing Bale?
Yeah, that's what I was doing. That's what I was working on.
We'll send you back to that fight as a level 20 paladin.
You see, there's that good monkey paw stuff, man. But yeah, so that was the other big meaty note that I had, which was, again, just the way that it saves, and again, so it's a double-edged sword, right? Is that it's nice that it's a roguelike because you never get bored at the dungeons, especially if you're going to make somebody have 7 different paladins, one with each different build, right? You can't make them go through that same dungeon 50,000 times. They'll lose their mind, right? But the way that it saves is weird. I mean, Darkest Dungeon does this better because literally at one point, Darkest Dungeon won't let you undo this even if you try, right? Because that's the whole point of that game.
Right.
If all of a sudden somebody loses their mind in the dungeon, you're like, this is going to be a problem. Well, maybe if I intentionally crash my PlayStation, it'll fix it. Nope, it just saves. It saves all the time, right? So you can literally be in the middle of a battle and it will put you right back where you started. This, and so you can save and quit at any point, right? So, and I think that this is again very doable in the sense that there's a certain expectation when you're online with friends that if you quit out then you're going to miss some stuff, right? But especially on a single player game, it would seem straightforward, which is like when I save and quit and I'm in the middle of a thing, just lock that dungeon for me, save where I'm at, let me quit, let me come back to exactly where I was, and then I'll keep going. And then if I ever return there again, then randomize that stuff right up. But just let me have a life and play this game, please.
Well, and this was Diablo 1 single player was not a roguelike, right? It's a rogue-ish where each game entire game is randomized, but if you don't restart the game, and we talked about this as like the only way you can grind is by starting a new game using the same character. Diablo 2 removes that bit of confusion, but at the cost of exactly what you're saying is you can't now save in the middle of a dungeon. You can't just stop and walk away, even in single player mode, because just like with Diablo 1, single player mode is really just training wheels for multiplayer. They wanted you to be playing online with other people because that social layer takes some of the bitter taste off of the Skinner box, right? Like,
or worse, that social aspect of it makes you feel that you owe your teammates to continue playing the Skinner box.
Right. Yeah. So it's a spoonful of sugar, right? It forces the medicine down.
No, what it does is it puts a drug addict in with other drug addicts. It makes sure that you're doing drugs with other people, so that way they keep you hooked on drugs.
Yeah. So
good game though.
The last thing I will say about that, because we've been harping on the Skinner box aspect of this a lot, is the most critical thing that they did not do with this game originally or in Resurrected, and that they didn't do until Diablo Immortal, and Diablo Immortal can go die in a fire, is you pay for this game once and then you're done.
Yep.
You don't have to pay to play online. There is no mechanism by which to give Blizzard money to get better equipment, right? You can't rich kid your way to victory. And so if you say, I like gambling, but I don't want to lose my house, right? I want the feeling of gambling. I want the Skinner box mechanics. This game will 100% accommodate you. And if you say, I would like to enjoy those Skinner box mechanics with other Skinner box addicts, they say, here's every Skinner box addict in the world. Play with all of them, right? Play with any of them. Play online, but play with none of them. Do whatever you want, right? So like, I don't get the same enjoyment out of that as I did when I was a kid. But as an adult, what I'm able to appreciate is that's a pretty like fair deal, right? I give you money and then you will let me do this thing I enjoy as much as I want, which I think like ethically does line up more with like a single player game. Like, I bought the game. Now let me play it. It's your game. It's your art that you made in your way, but now let me play it more or less on my terms. Whereas Diablo Immortal and lots of other Skinner box likes that have, or Diablo likes that have come after, you can rich kid your way to victory. And I have no patience for that. I have no tolerance for a game where that is even possible. Like Genshin Impact. A lot of people are like, I think you even said like, oh, yeah, I checked it out. Like, I'm going to see what it's about. And I was just like, oh, game has a bunch of gacha mechanics. Nope, not interested, because I just know that deep down, they will never truly design a game that can just be fun on its own terms. It will always, there's this that's a real drug addict, right? That's a real recovered alcoholic. There's this specter of like, but you could give us more money. And it's like, no, I just want to play the game. And it's like, hey man, you go, you play the game. I mean, you could give us more money though. And it's like, no, I said I'm not gonna. No, you said you're not gonna. It's fine. But you could though.
You always could. And I think that to your point, right, is that I think that back when this game came out, the idea of like a Genshin Impact, which, you know, it's fine, man. It's just a little, it's good. And honestly, I played it for, I don't know, maybe I put 20 hours into it, and then I just stopped. But I will say that game in particular, not to die on a hill defending Genshin Impact, was not obtrusive with constantly being like, pay us more money. You know, I have played games where, you know, it is very much so, hey man, that's fine. And you hit what everyone calls a paywall, right? Where it's basically the game becomes unplayable unless you start paying, but it's only $1, man. You're like, yeah, I'll put $1 into it. And then all of a sudden the paywall is like $50, you know, like over time, right? And I think that that's where this type of game ultimately led historically. But at the time, it was like, hey, man, we found a way to hack your brain so that way you love playing our game. You know, so what does that mean? It means you're going to talk it up to your friends and we're going to sell more copies of it. But then we're done, you know? Then eventually people are like, oh, wait, but what if we could keep selling them stuff? It's like, promote that man, you know? So
incentivize that employee.
So this game is the person who was creating extra strength opioids for outpatient surgeries, right? And then, you know, so somebody in a plaid suit, you know, outside of a pharmacy said, hey, what if we just give them to people that didn't go through surgery?
They also have money.
So, you got anything else?
The one other thing I wanted to mention, just because we had both complained a little bit about it in Diablo 1 and it is unchanged in Diablo 2, but I heard that they've actually changed this in Diablo 3 and are planning to further tweak it in Diablo 4, is the developers, I didn't look into this, somebody in Twitch chat explained this to me. The developers apparently were aware that like Scrolls of Identify and Scrolls of Town Portal are like kind of stupid, and the way you can like spam potions, like you can keep your inventory open and essentially have an entire inventory full of potions, right? So you can just spam healing potions and take down challenges you have no business taking down because you're stim packing yourself to victory, right? It's not great. And some people
they just see you walking in with a dialysis machine, but it's filled with potion, you know, and it's like, yeah, you know, it's like, let's do this thing, Diablo.
Yeah. Come on. It's like, dude, you don't look well. I'm fine.
Fine. It's none of your business.
Don't tell me how to live my life, you dead bastard. But I'm not going to take advice on living from a dead man.
There it is. There's the quote.
Yeah, that was the one. It took, what was that? Three iterations. That's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's good workshopping.
So I was willing to do that with what I could fit in my belt, right? So I would potion spam with what I could fit in my belt, but some people will potion spam with what they could fit in their whole inventory, plus the inside of their Herodric cube, which gives you 12 more inventory slots. So like they'll really push that mechanic. And apparently in Diablo 3, you just have a thing that has a cooldown timer, and so you can't abuse it, right? You have to, health is a resource you have to manage, but you can't hook yourself up to a dialysis machine. And I think Town Portals and Scrolls of Identify also went the same route, where it was like, this is a thing you can do. We're not going to make you manage Scrolls of Town Portal, because that is just, they are essentially free because gold is so abundant and monsters drop them. Like, I never, ever was afraid of running out of Scrolls of Town Portal, ever. And once you get Kain, Scrolls of Identify are pointless.
Yeah. Then they become completely obsolete. Yeah, in Diablo 3, I think they use health orbs too, which is a good mechanic, because then you have to kill things before you can get health back, you know? So, but yeah, so what do you think, man? Hold up?
Yeah, I mean, even though we just complained a lot about like we're old now and we don't get the same enjoyment out of Skinner boxes as we did when we were in high school and college, like yes, like this game is probably one of the most faithful like remasters I've ever seen for a game that arguably didn't even need to be remastered. Like it's the reason the list of quality of life improvements is so short is because they didn't really
got it
need
right
to,
the first time.
Yeah, they didn't really need to change that much. And it's not that this formula has no room for improvement. Like personally, I have come to like the looter shooter more than the hack and slash because the looter shooter is more real time. And even though I suck at FPSs, as I've said many times,
hey, no,
buddy, come on, champ. Like, but I find that gameplay to be more enjoyable because there's my stuff and then there's me, and those two things work in tandem, right? Mega Man X is a great example of this. The upgrades are super clutch, and it's really, really hard to play the game without them. But even if you get all the hard tanks, you get all the sub tanks, and get the armor upgrade, if you just stand there and let them shoot you, you will die, right? So like you still have to play the game, even if you get all the stuff. A game like
you can't build a Thorns Mega Man.
You cannot. Not yet. No, there's 3 more Mega Man X games we haven't played
good
yet.
God, probably in Mega Man 6. You know, I mean, looking at the way the series went. But anyways, that's
maybe.
not the point.
But in a game like Borderlands, the loot matters so much, but you playing the game also really matters, and I have come to prefer that balance. But if you care a lot more about the gambling aspect, man, Diablo 2 is just the drug that keeps on drugging. So like, if you played this game and you remember it fondly and you want to go back to it, yes, 100%. No nostalgia goggles are required because it is exactly like you remember it. If you've never tried it and you're like, oh yeah, I like Diablo 1, but I never got around to playing Diablo 2. Like, yes, totally. It is more of Diablo. But it is no longer a taste that I'm as fond of as I once was. And that's a little sad, but like as a piece of art, yeah, no nostalgia goggles required.
I completely agree with you, despite the fact that I basically spent the last hour and a half picking it apart and saying that all the things I didn't like about this game, all of those things hold up. So, I mean, that's the thing, is that the question isn't whether or not the game holds up with time. It does. The thing is that the game hasn't changed. I have, right? So, like, the game absolutely is exactly what you think it was. I just don't like it anymore, you know? So it's just kind of like saying, hey, do you like, gummy bears? And it's like, those gummy bears, it is the exact same recipe that they have been using for the last 20 years. I don't like gummy bears anymore, but that recipe is unchanged. It tastes exactly the way you remember it. Yeah. So yeah, it's a Skinner box. I didn't have the words for it at the time, but I absolutely loved putting myself in those Skinner boxes. And then at some point I stopped liking that and I continue to not like it, but it is a very, very good Skinner box. So if you still like games that fall into that category, it's a pretty straightforward choice. Unlike with my Paladin, it's not thorny at all.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone, there's no player 2 there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creeping with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day.